Thank you for watching. They've got nothing on Trump. They have nowhere to go. The Michael Cohen hearing was the last gasp. He exonerated Trump regarding, Russia collusion and regarding obstruction of justice. And the obstruction of justice charges stem on and depend on proving Russia collusion, which hasn't happened. The expectations for the Mueller release have been already leaked, which is to not expect anything major, just more embarrassing stuff that really does not belong in a congressional hearing. And that was the sum total of this. It all came down once it was proven that, or once it was fairly resolved that there's no Russia collusion, no obstruction of justice, came down to papers. Now, obviously that's embarrassing and that's a disgrace, but it's not illegal, and it's not something that needs to be talked about in a congressional hearing. And even there, I mean, Michael Cohen produced a couple of checks that were made out to him. The allegation being that it was done from the Trump campaign, and those checks were drawn from an account that's one of Trump's businesses. So it obviously had nothing to do with this campaign. And even if it did, that's not illegal. It's a misdemeanor. He'd be slapped on the wrist. Obama was fined. The Obama campaign was fined, as have been other campaigns. That's nothing new. Those campaign finance laws are misdemeanors. They're not laws. They're rules about elections. When you file for candidacy and you accept donations, a candidate has to file a report with the Federal Elections Commission, and they have to agree to all these rules. They're not laws. They're rules. And so even if he did write those checks on his campaign, which he didn't, then he wouldn't have done anything illegal. And by the way, speaking of campaigns, I think it's now been alleged that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wrote a check of $6,000 to her boyfriend from campaign money, and they're calling it marketing consulting, which the boyfriend apparently is not. So, and that shows how stupid she is anyway, because since she's genuflected to the left, she's become super famous. She obviously could make a ton of money from a book deal. She'll be like Obama, get an $8 million advance for a book deal. So what does she waste, risking a reputation for $6,000 from a campaign? I mean, it's short-sighted, and it shows someone who is either ignorant of how things work, or who is so narcissistic that she assumes she'll never be called on it. Either way, that doesn't bode well. But getting back to Trump, there's nothing there. I mean, there's, the business with the hookers, that's not impeachable. It's not illegal. They're going to scour through all of his businesses, which is like, it's almost Stalinist, to say, oh, well, they're going to hold it up and look. I mean, you listen to MSNBC, it's like a show trial every night. They're like, hysterically panting over some business deal that Trump had many years ago, long before he was president. Now, look, God forbid, anyone who undergoes that kind of microscopic examination as a businessman, they're going to find probably some technical improprieties. I mean, the business that was brought up, I think, by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, that he had a straw person purchase a portrait so it would look good, that it would be inflated, and the money was paid out of the Trump Foundation. Well, guess what? That's done all the time in the art world. It's not necessarily good, but it's not illegal. Artists want to ramp up the value of their work, so they arrange for someone to purchase something at a higher cost, which raises the cost of all their work. That's nothing new. It's not illegal. It's silly and it doesn't look great, but these things, for them to be focusing on these things is really, desperate, and it's low. But just to get back, if they do find some impropriety in his business practices after putting him under a microscope, and even so, he's never been charged with anything. But let's say he is charged. It still doesn't matter because he's the sitting president of the United States, because these things happened long before he was president, so it's not a high crime and misdemeanor. There's nothing impeachable there. It would be stuff that he had done, in the past, prosecuted while he's in office. So they'll have to wait until he leaves office before they start the show trials, and they start to, try to put him in jail. And believe me, that's exactly what they'd like to do. And I suppose the solution to that would be very Trumpian, and that is that after he's reelected and he's finishing his second term, on his last day in office, he issues a pardon, a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to himself and to every member of his family to protect them. And then he can leave office and people will be, oh, the point is that this is nothing but a Stalinist style prosecution of a private businessman. I saw, who was it, on MSNBC, this guy Steyer, multi-billionaire, saying that Trump was committing illegal business activities. Really? I'd like to see the government put a microscope on top of him. Let's see what kind of activities he's done. These aren't illegal. Ethical, maybe challenged. Maybe borderline illegal. But it's difficult to be in business in this country when you've got so many layers of regulation that prevent you from doing or impede you from doing things that really should be normal. Now, I'm not saying that to justify skirting the law, certainly not breaking the law. I only bring it up because, I don't think that too many business people, especially when you get to the level of Donald Trump, could withstand the kind of scrutiny that he's undergoing and come out absolutely 100% squeaky clean. So putting all that aside, the point of the matter is that the Democrats from day one, and especially now that we're moving toward the election, they can't win on the issues. President Donald Trump is on the right side of the issues. He wants to de-escalate and end these ongoing foreign wars that the United States has been embroiled in since World War II. He wants our foreign allies, like our NATO partners, to handle their own security, especially after the fall of the old Soviet Union, and finance that security, either by doing it themselves or by paying us to do it. These are all good things. He wants trade deals that favor American labor and American industry over that of foreign competitors. That's a good thing. He wants to lower taxes. He wants to reduce onerous regulations. He's not an anarchist. He doesn't want to end regulations, but he wants to get unnecessary, redundant, and repetitive regulations that are hobbling the ability of business people to get into business, to expand their business. Those judges who actually read the Constitution and try to interpret it in the way that's closest to the original intent of the Founding Fathers, rather than simply holding their own little constitutional convention and making stuff up as they go. These are all good things that the American people support when they understand it. And this is why the Democrats won't bring up issues. Instead, they want to, try to take Trump out, by finding some technicality, some legality, something that he might have done in the past. If you listen, one of the worst ones of all that she's on regular on MSNBC, and I interviewed her once years ago, is former Congresswoman Elizabeth Holtzman. Oh my God, she's like a tyrant. Talk about fascists. Every little thing that Trump has ever done, if he talks to this one, if he looks at that one, that's impeachment. Impeachment. He is doing things that have been the conventional prerogative of past presidents, going all the way back to James Madison, probably further back. But for Trump, it's impeachable, it's obstructionable, it's illegal, and because it's Trump. I could go through many, many examples of that, including, the idea of banning certain nations from immigration or from getting passports. That goes back to James Madison, who did that against Canada. during the War of 1812. That is a presidential prerogative. Obama did it. Jimmy Carter did it. Presidents have always done it. But for Trump, to the sudden, this is illegal. This is, can't be done. Fortunately, we had enough judges who can read the Constitution and so anyway, I'm not sure I'm connected, but the point is that the normal function of the office all of a sudden are viewed as illegal when in the hands of President Donald Trump. My point here, and I hope this is being carried because I'm getting a reconnecting sign, is that the entire rotten conspiracy theory edifice against President Trump is dead. They're going to continue to try to nitpick. I think the American people are going to get sick and tired of it. I don't think it's going to make it in the long run. And I think that President Trump, as a result, is going to be reelected with a larger margin than his first election. And that'll be a great and glorious day, I think, for all of us and for